Hey everyone, it's Megan here from Meghan Makes Do, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet the Esme cardigan. Okay, so for this tutorial and to make this pattern, you're going to need some Feels Like Butta in two different colors. For exact yardages for each size, you can check the description below, or if you're working off the blog or the written PDF pattern, you can go ahead and take a look at that first page under materials, and then again on the third page for your specific size. It'll give you exact yardage amounts, but this light charcoal color is going to be our color A, which will be the main piece of our cardigan, and then our color B is this nice black Feels Like Butta, and we're actually going to be breaking this down into smaller balls for our hearts. You'll also need a size G 4mm crochet hook. I'm using this nice metal one from Furls, as well as a pair of scissors and a tapestry needle for when we're weaving in all of the ends. So before you get started, I do recommend breaking down your color B into smaller balls of yarn, and I'll show you kind of what that will look like right now. Okay, so here you can see I'm just taking small amounts of the yarn and winding it up into smaller little balls. And these are going to be used for when we make each heart on the back panels, the front panels, and the sleeves. Depending on what size you're making, you will need anywhere from 4 to 6 hearts total, or I guess balls of yarns for your hearts, because you'll only be working with that many at a time ever, and that's mostly for the back panel. So just break up your ball into, or your skein of yarn into smaller balls of yarn for making your hearts before you get started. So for the Esme cardigan tutorial, I'm not going to be showing you every step of every panel. So the back panel will look similar to this. I made the size 2X, so this is my size with the number of hearts that I have and the number of repeats that I'll have. So all sizes will end up being the same height, but you can easily adjust your rows and just eliminate this last heart repeat if you want it to be a shorter cardigan. Just know it's going to take a couple inches off of that length for you. But the front and the back panels are constructed very similarly. So I'm not going to go over every little thing, but I'm going to kind of show you what it looks like in the pattern and how to read the instructions. And then when we get to the front panels, I'm going to show you exactly how we do the ribbing and work into the edge of the ribbing, and how we do the color work for each heart and what that's going to look like on the wrong side and the right side, using just the example of that front right panel. So let's go ahead and take a look at the written pattern, and I'm going to show you what I recommend doing before you get started. Okay, so this is the printed version of the pattern, but if you're working off the blog, you can kind of follow along the same way. So we're going to start our back panel with ribbing and color A. And then after we get our ribbing done, we work into the main body section and we work right into the edges of the ribbing. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky when we get to our color work section. And what I want you to do is I want you to kind of read through here and make sure that you're following along for your size. So it's going to look like a lot, but I promise you, once I explain it, it's not very confusing. So let me zoom in here. Okay. So for example, our first colorwork row, we're working all in single crochet front loop only. And for our first couple stitches, we're working with color A. Now, the reason why there's so many numbers here is because that's for each size. The first size listed, 12, that's extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, 3X, 4X, 5X. So only do the number indicated for your size for that first part. And what I recommend doing is taking a highlighter and just highlighting the size, the number that you need. Okay, same over here. We do 1B, then we're going to do 23A, 1B times however many is said for your size. So again, extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, 3X, 4X, 5X. Then to end, we do the same number as we did at the very beginning because they're even on both sides. So I'm going to go over and highlight for the 2X. So now I know for row 3, for the 2X size, I do 8 single crochet front loop only in color A, 1 in B. I'm going to do 23A, 1B 4 times. Then I'm going to do 8 in color A to end. Okay, and it's going to be like that for all of our Colorwork rows. This is where we're making the hearts. Okay, so make sure that you are highlighting the numbers that are indicated for the size that you are making before you get started. It will help a lot in the long run. You can easily see when you glance at the pattern, it's nice and bright. You know exactly how many of each color to make. Okay? Okay, so again, for the back panel, this is where you're going to have the most hearts and the most Colorwork sections. And remember, each heart is going to be its own separate little ball of yarn. And what we're going to do is we're going to carry our gray yarn only on the wrong side of our work. And then we're going to have 2 little tails for the color B at each heart that eventually we'll need to weave in our ends. So the wrong side of our work, you're going to be able to tell what side that is, but the right side is going to look nice and clean and give us these pretty little hearts on our cardigan. So let me show you what one of the front panels will look like. So here is my front left panel. And again, this is for size 2X. For sizes extra small through 3X, you will have 1 heart every pattern repeat, and our repeat goes over 20 rows. So we have 10 rows for the heart, 10 solid rows, 10 rows for the heart, 10 solid rows, and our hearts are going to be kind of going zigzag back and forth. For 4X and 5X, you're going to have 2 hearts zigzagging back and forth. So it's going to look a little bit different, but still is going to be very similar as far as construction and how we do it. And again, just as the back panel was, we carry everything onto the back side or the wrong side of our work. So I'm going to go ahead and start showing you kind of more of the details of how this pattern is constructed by working up the front right side. And it's actually going to be the mirror image of our left front panel. And I'll show you again kind of how it's written out and where to highlight so you know exactly how to construct your Esme cardigan. Okay, so here are our instructions for the front right panel. You'll see for the back panel, front left panel, and front right panel, they all start the same. We're going to start with our ribbing with color A, and then we're going to turn our work and work directly into the edge of the ribbing. And then when we get to the Colorwork section, we'll split off and work and want to make sure that we highlight our size. So the difference between the back panel and the front panels, 1, there's more hearts in the back panel and less hearts in the front panels. And 2, the size instructions are split up. So you'll see here we have extra small through 3X only. So these are the instructions only for those sizes. And then when we get to the next page, you'll see we have 5 and 4X only. Here are their instructions. So they're a little bit easy to follow because you only have 2 sets of numbers for these 2 sizes. So let's go ahead and highlight, since I'm making the 2X. So extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, 2X. So we're just going to highlight all the numbers that coordinate with my size that I'm making. So you'll want to do this as well. This is why I do recommend for any Colorwork patterns, getting the printable version. It just makes it so much easier to follow along and stay on track. But the nice thing is, because of the way that this cardigan is constructed, it's very easy and simple to follow along for your size. Okay, so that's good enough for now. I'll walk you through kind of how we start the cardigan And then as we get into this color work section, I'm going to show you how I like to carry my yarn, how I change colors, all of that. If you have different techniques that you prefer to use, you're welcome to use those as well. I just want to show you exactly what I did so you can get a similar result to mine. Okay, so for all sizes, for back panel and both front panels, we start the same. We're working with color A and our 4mm hook, and we want to put a slip knot on our hook, and we're going to chain 8. That's 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then to start our ribbing, in the second chain from the hook, we're going to single crochet and then single crochet into each stitch or chain all the way across. Okay, so that's the end of row 1. For row 2, we chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to be working single crochet back loop only into each stitch all the way across. So make sure that you're just going into that back loop of your stitch. And this is what will give us that nice ribbed look to the bottom of our panels. And then we're just going to repeat row 2 for the number of times indicated for your size. So again, I can show you with my pattern. So here you'll see again, and this is for all sizes. So extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, 2X. So I know I need to make 41 rows of single crochet back loop only. So I'm going to go ahead and continue making my rows, and you can do the same until you have the number of rows indicated for your size. Okay, so I have finished my ribbing, and hopefully you have finished yours as well. And now we're going to move on to the first 2 rows, and we'll be working that first row into the edges of our ribbing. So as we were working our ribbing this way back and forth in rows, we're going to turn our work 90 degrees, chain 1, and work into the edges of each row of ribbing. And we're going to work 1 single crochet into each edge all the way across. So however many rows of ribbing you have, that's how many single crochets you will have for row 1 of your main body. Okay, so here's our last stitch of row 1. And then for row 2, we chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to start working single crochet front loop only. And we'll do that starting at row 2 all the way through the end of our panel. So we'll start this first row. We're just going to single crochet front loop only all the way across. So make sure that you're only going through that front loop of your stitch. Okay, so here's our last stitch. We're going to chain 1 and turn. And starting with our next row, we're going to begin our color work section. So you'll also want to grab one of the small balls of color B that you made. If you are doing a 4X or 5X, you'll need 2 balls. But for every other size, for this sample of our front right panel, we only need 1. Okay, so referencing back to our pattern, we are right here, and we're going to continue to work all stitches in single crochet front loop only, and we're using a separate ball of color B for each heart. So when we're reading the pattern, we are going to be looking at what color that first number of stitches indicates. So for row 3, we want to single crochet front loop only. For me, I'm going to do 26 in color A, then 1 in color B, and then finish out the rest of my row with color A. So I'm going to start by working 26 in color A. Again, continuing to do single crochet front loop only. Okay, so here is our 26th stitch, and before I finish this stitch with that last yarn over, we're actually going to switch to color B, and we want to leave a small tail for seaming or weaving in our ends. So we'll finish that last stitch with color B, then we'll do 1 stitch of color B, again stopping before that last yarn over. And then we want to pick up color A again and finish off that stitch. And then we'll work the rest of the row in color A. And again, if you are doing the 4X or 5X, you'll have an extra heart in each repeat. And if you're doing the back panel, you will have a certain number of repeats where you'll have so many stitches of A and then another stitch of B all the way across. So we're just starting our hearts, and again we're just going to leave color B attached. We're not fastening that off, and we're going to work that color B back and forth all the way up until our heart is complete. So this is the right side of your work, and the next row will be the wrong side. So you can see that I am making sure all of my ends are on that wrong side of my work. So for row 4, chain 1 and turn. And again, doing single crochet front loop only. Make sure you're doing it in the number of stitches that are indicated for your size. It should be just 1 less from what you ended in. So I ended with 14. This time I'm going to start with 13. Okay, so we're getting to our last stitch here. Now, when we have the wrong side, instead of leaving my color A towards the back, I'm going to bring it to the wrong side of my work. And then I'm going to pick up color B. And then I like to go kind of underneath that carried piece. And we are going to work 3 single crochet front loop onlys in color B, and then I will leave my color B towards the front this time, and then I'm just carrying my color A over, making sure it's not pulled too tight because we don't want our fabric to kind of crinkle up. So leave it kind of loose and do that last yarn over after you've completed the number of stitches you need in color B, and then continue on working in color A for the number of stitches indicated for your size. So every time that you get to that heart, you're going to stop, switch to color B, and then again at the end of color B stitches, switch back to color A. So I'm just going to finish out this row, and then continue working across in color A until I get to my next color change. So you can kind of see how I like to do all my color changes. Okay, so we're getting back to our color change here. Now, since I'm working on the right side, I'm going to leave my color A towards the back, pick up color B, and finish that last yarn over. And then again, going under the carried piece, I'm going to work my first color B stitch and all the rest of my color B stitches. And then when I want to change, I'm going to loosely carry over color A. And I like to kind of hold it down loosely with my ring finger and then yarn over and pull through. And I like to work that first stitch before I pull my color B tight. Okay, so you can see we have a nice clean right side, and then we're carrying that color A across on the wrong side. So hopefully you're kind of getting an idea here of how I've made my Esme cardigan and how I like to carry. So I'm using a mix of intarsia crochet and then Fair Isle crochet to do this. Another option would be if you want to do tapestry crochet, you could, where you kind of work around the strands of color A instead of carrying them along the back. It's totally up to you. It might provide just a thicker area on the hearts. But I just really wanted to make sure that you couldn't see any of the yarn like from the right side of the cardigan. Okay, so we're just going to continue working as the pattern indicates each row, and we're kind of increasing the number of stitches for our heart until we get to like the middle of the heart. So on this row, I can show you what it looks like to catch the floats on the back. And I'll try to show you what that looks like on the wrong side like this and what it will look on the right side as well. Okay, so again, since we're working on the wrong side, I'm going to bring my color A towards me, pick up color B, finish off that stitch, and then start working my stitches in color B. And maybe after 3 or 4 stitches here, I want to catch my yarn so I'm not having too big of floats going across. And the way to do that is we're going to bring our color A over, kind of across our work, and we're going to go under the color A strand when we insert our hook into the next stitch. Then we work our stitch, so we've caught that color A. Again, we want to keep it somewhat loose. We don't want it to be, you know, too loose like that, but we don't want it to be so tight that it's going to pull our work. So just nice and loose. We've caught it once, and then we can finish out the rest of our stitches for color B before we switch back to color A. Again, keeping our float loose. We don't want to get it too tight. And then continuing on with color A. So you can see I've caught color A in that middle stitch, but on the right side, you can't see it through there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and work the rest of this row and start the next row, and I'll show you how I do the catch of our floats from the right side of our work. Okay, so there's our last stitch in color A. Since the right side is facing us, we're going to keep our color A to the back, pick up color B to finish off that stitch, and then work our first few stitches in color B. So maybe I'll do 4 stitches, and on that 5th stitch, I'm going to insert my hook into the front loop, And then I want to pick up color A, again keeping it loose, draw it over the hook, and you can kind of use your finger to hold it in place, and then finish off making our stitch so that we've worked around that color A. And again, you saw I can kind of pull it tighter if it's a little too loose. Then we kind of bring it to the back again and finish working in color B for the number of stitches indicated. And then we can pick up color A again, kind of hold it loosely, and finish off our stitch and continue working in color A for the rest of our row. Okay, so you can see that our heart is forming here. I have one more row of the increase part, and then we're going to work 3 rows that are just kind of straight the same with the same number of stitches for each heart. And then I'll show you what the last 2 rows will look like. So go ahead and continue working on your panel as well, making sure that you are making your hearts as you go. And then I'll meet you back here for those last 2 rows of color work for our hearts. Okay, so we have 2 more rows of color work for our heart to go. So the second to last one on this last stitch before we switch here, this is where we'll kind of see the top of our heart start to take shape. So I've switched, making sure to keep my color A to the back of my work. We're going to work 5 in color B. There's 4, and here is 5, and on that 5th one, we want to switch back to color A, again making sure that our carried yarn doesn't get too tight. Work 1 stitch in color A, switch back to color B, so make sure you're kind of pulling color B tight. You don't want your stitches to be too loose, and then continue making 5 stitches with color B. And again, we can pull that color A a bit tighter. And on that 5th stitch, we'll switch back to color A. And then work to the end of our row. So you can kind of see there's the little dip in our heart. So I'm going to finish out this row and then get to my color work section of the first heart for that last row. And our last row of color work for the hearts will be on a wrong side row. Okay. So for this color work part, we're actually working into that first black stitch, bringing our yarn to the wrong side, and then we're going to work 3 stitches in color B, again bringing that to the wrong side, pick up color A, making sure to keep it somewhat loose. And then we work 3 stitches in color A, bring color A to the wrong side, pick up color B again keeping that loose, and then 3 stitches in color B. Tighten up A as we go, and then bring this yarn. Normally I've been bringing it to the front. For this I want it to the back so that my end can be woven in on the back. Pick up color A, and then finish out my row with that color or if you're doing the bigger sizes, you'll have one more heart to make. But hopefully this gives you kind of a general idea of how to do the colorwork sections of your panels. Okay, so now I can cut off my color B, leaving a tail for weaving in. Oops, got stuck there. And if I flip it over on the right side, you can see my heart has been made. Okay, so once we finish off this last row of color work, we're going to do our solid work section. So we're going to do 10 rows of solid single crochet front loop only using color A. Okay, so I've completed a solid work section, which is 10 rows. And now I'll be ready to start my next color work section, which will be kind of like opposite of what we did this first time. So our hearts are going to kind of stagger, zigzag back and forth. Same as on the back panel, you'll have a row of hearts, and then the next color work section, the hearts will go in between the previous hearts. So if I grab our left panel here, you can see they're like mirror images of each other. So we've got the hearts here, and then we'll have the hearts kind of closer together. So when I do my next color work section, my heart's going to be over here. And then we'll do another solid section. So it'll look kind of like this to about up here. And then we repeat those rows one more time. So rows 3 through 42, we repeat that one more time, and then we do rows 3 through 14. So you'll have 2 solid rows at the very end, so the very top of your panel. And again, if you find that that's too long for you, you can shorten it just by kind of taking out that last heart repeat, and then you can stop anywhere along this solid section until you have the height that you want. So go ahead and continue working. Make sure that you have your back panel complete and both front panels complete, following along with the written pattern, which you can find for free on my blog or in my shop as a printable PDF. And then I'll meet you back here and show you how to do our sleeves. All right, so now we are ready to make our sleeves, and I'm going to show you a bit of the written pattern if you're following along with it. So our sleeves, we're going to make 2 identical sleeves, and they're going to be tapered, so they're going to be smaller at the cuff and then get larger as we go up to our armhole. So the ribbing, we're going to start the same as we did for the back and front panels with color A and our 4mm hook. We'll chain 8, and we'll have single crochet back loop only ribbing for a set number of rows indicated here for your size. Then when we get to the main body, we're going to turn our work and again be working into the edges of the ribbing, but now our sizes are split off a couple of different ways for the remainder of the sleeve. So our extra small is written on its own. And then we have our small, medium, and large is written together. We have our extra large, 2X, 3X, 4X are all written together, so you will want to highlight your size in these areas. And then our 5X is also written on its own. And then if you went ahead and purchased the PDF copy of the pattern, you will also have a couple graphs included that kind of show the increases as you go. So I'll be showing you that as I work up my sleeve and show you a little bit of the details of that. But let's go ahead and make our ribbing, and then we'll get into the bulk of the sleeve pattern. Okay, so again, like I said, we're going to start with the ribbing just as we have for the back and front panels, by putting a slip knot on our hook and chaining 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then for the first row into that second chain from the hook, we're going to work a single crochet. and then we'll work a single crochet into all the rest of the chains all the way across for row 1. Okay, then we chain 1 and turn, and for row 2 we're going to be working through that back loop only, single crocheting all the way across. And we'll just repeat row 2 for the total number of rows indicated for your size. And again, this is going to be the cuff that's going to go around your wrist. And we are working our sleeves from the bottom up, just as we did the back panel and both front panels. So just continue to repeat row 2 until you have the total number of rows needed for your size. Okay, so I've done the amount of rows of ribbing for my size, which is a 2X. And now if we look at the pattern, just note that each size starts a little bit different. Some sizes, when you're working that first row of the main body of the sleeve, you're going to be increasing at the beginning and end. Others, you're not going to increase. And then I believe there's a size where you do 2 increases on each end. So just really pay attention to what is happening for your size. Let me go ahead and get the instructions for my size, and we're going to highlight the area. So you'll also notice that some of row 1 for certain sizes are written differently. So if you're making the extra large 2X, 3X, or 4X, obviously extra large 3X, the row 1 is written, you're just going to single crochet across. For 2X, we're going to increase at the first stitch and last stitch, and 4X, we're increasing twice. And then from row 2 on, they're all kind of written the same. We just need to highlight for our size. So I can go ahead and highlight. If I'm doing 2X, I'm going to highlight my row 1 right there. And then the second number as I go is for my size. So you get the idea, but this is definitely something I recommend doing, is printing out the pattern and then highlighting for your size so that you can more easily follow along. Okay, so for our first row, again, all sizes are going to be slightly different, but I'm going to work 2 single crochet into the first stitch or first edge of row, and then 1 single crochet into each end of each row all the way across until I have 1 row edge left. But like I said, some sizes you'll be increasing twice, some sizes you will not be increasing at all. So it really just depends on what size you are making, so make sure that you are paying attention and following along for your size. Okay, make sure my tail's out of the way there. And then I've gotten to the last row, and I'm going to work 2 single crochet there as well since I'm making the 2X. Okay, and then I can show you, if you have the printable PDF, you'll see a page like this for your size. So down here you can see for row 1, at the end of row 1, I will have 35 stitches because I'm making the 2X size. And then you'll see that we're going to work straight for the next row, and then in row 3 we're going to start our color work. Okay, so this is just half of the sleeve, and this last stitch here, this is the center stitch. So it's a you just keep going and make the mirror image. You're increasing on both sides of your sleeve as you go, so it'll kind of go like this, make a little triangle shape almost, or I guess trapezoid shape. But then you'll see the rows that kind of move over, that's an increase row. So you know that you're going to be increasing on these rows, and this chart just helps you make sure that you're following along and that you're doing the color work rows and the increase rows correctly. And so that'll go all the way up, and I can show you what the finished sleeve will look like. So you can kind of see how it compares to our graph. The graph is just kind of showing you this half of the sleeve, but again, it's the mirror image, so you just kind of do the same thing, and it's all written here in the pattern for you, but you can see that the sleeves do make that same shape as the graph. We're kind of going up and increasing at a certain rate all the way up. And the reason why the sizes are written different is that certain sizes are increasing at a different rate because there are either more or less rows that we're working with. But we're still going to have this same heart pattern going on. You'll still be doing that mix of like intarsia and tapestry crochet for your hearts as you go. So it's constructed very similar to the front and back panels. The only difference is we're also adding those increases. So I'm going to go ahead and work my row 2, and then I'm going to work row 3 and show you an increase row so you can see exactly how that is done. So for row 2, we chain 1 and turn. And again, we're going to start row 2 by working front loop only, single crochet in each stitch all the way across. So just like our back and front panels, we had 2 rows of solid color A before we start adding the color B in for our hearts. We'll do the same thing on the sleeves. Okay, so that's the end of row 2. For row 3, this is where we're going to start our color work, and you'll see that it's indicated in the written pattern here. And you can see clearly on the chart that row 3, we're going to start adding some color B. So if I'm following along for my size, I know I'm going to single crochet front loop only 17, and then work 1 in color B, and then work another 17 in color A. And then in the following row, that's where we will start our increasing. So I'm going to go ahead and work my 17 stitches. Okay, so this is stitch 17, and I want to pick up my color B yarn. And we're going to finish off that 17th stitch with the new color, and then work the start of the next stitch with color B, but then we're going to drop that, pick up color A again, and finish off that stitch with color A. And then we can kind of tighten up color B as we go. And then we do 17 stitches of color A. But again, if you're following along for a different size, you'll have a different stitch count here. But we're basically, after we do those color work stitches in the middle, we'll end and begin at the same row count, or stitch count, sorry. Okay, and then we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we'll be ready to start our first increase row. I'm already getting tangled up with my color B yarn. There we go. Okay, so row 4, you'll see we have increase written here, and to work an increase, we're just going to single crochet front loop only twice into the same stitch. So work 2 single crochet into that first stitch, then we're going to do 15 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And when we get to the end, again, since we're on the wrong side of our work, we're gonna bring that color A towards us, pick up color B, finish off that stitch, and then we'll work 3 of color B, front loop only, pick back up that color A, making sure not to pull it too tightly, since we're just floating it along that wrong side of our work. And then we will work across the same number of stitches that we did at the beginning of our row, and we'll end with an increase in that last stitch. So we're starting and ending all of our rows exactly the same way, and we'll be increasing on both sides every few rows depending on what size you're making, while also doing our color work as we go. Okay, so again, I want to end with 2 single crochet, front loop only, in that last stitch. Chain 1 and turn, and then I'll continue on with my same instructions going all the way through, and I can use this helpful graph if you have the printable version to help me keep track. It's also very helpful. You can use a pencil, just kind of cross off the rows as you go, but this will help you see exactly where those increases are and what row of color work you should be on when you're making those increases. So just continue on as is instructed, and eventually you will have 2 sleeves that look somewhat like this that you'll be ready to seam onto your Esme cardigan. So go ahead and finish up your sleeves, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so now that our back panel and both of our front panels are finished, we can lay them down with shoulders together. So you'll notice that we're going to seam our shoulders across on both sides, and then we'll have a bit of a gap here for our neckline in the center. And you can use whichever seaming method you prefer. I'll show you shortly which one I use. I like to use mattress stitch, but we're just going to seam our left and right shoulders to our back panel. Okay, so this is my back panel and this is my front left panel. And so I'm just going to take the long tail I left on my front panel and take that end and feed it through a blunt tapestry needle like this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and working through the tops of my stitches, I'm going to weave back and forth in a mattress stitch. So since our tail end is here on the front, I'm going to go through the top of the stitch, first stitch on the back panel, and then through the first stitch on the front panel, and then we'll go back to the back panel and go through that second stitch, and then go through the second stitch on the front panel, and we'll just continue to do this, weaving back and forth between the panels, always making sure to go from like the inside of the seam out. And then once we get a few stitches done, we can pull it tighter, tighten up that seam for us, and it will give us almost a fully invisible seam here along the shoulders. So I'm just going to continue to seam using mattress stitch all the way across for my left panel, and then I'm going to take my right panel and attach it from the other edge of my back panel over. And like I said, you will have a space in between. I'll put the stitch counts here for you of how many stitches you'll have unstitched in the center of your back panel which will be your neckline. But go ahead and get both panels seamed on, and I'll meet you back here and show you how to seam on the sleeves. So now that both our sleeves are done, we want to seam our sleeves onto our cardigan, and we'll be doing that on both sides. And what you'll want to do is line up the center of your sleeve with the seam on the shoulders, and then I recommend measuring however many inches down your sleeve is and attaching it with a stitch marker so that you know that you have so many inches here, and that matches so many inches on the back panel too. So you want to attach it evenly and then use your preferred method of seaming to seam the sleeves onto the cardigan so that both sides are the same. Okay, and then just to show you how I prefer to seam my sleeves on, this is my back panel, this is my front panel, and my seam is right here. And I have a stitch marker in the center stitch of my sleeve and in the shoulder seam. And then I want to make sure that I'm laying everything nice and even and flat. And I'm gonna use my measuring tape to measure about 9 inches down. Oops. And I want to make sure that I'm attaching the last stitch of my sleeve to the back panel about 9 inches down. And then the same on the other side. I want to make sure it's also 9 inches down. You can also count the number of rows that your sleeve goes down the back side and the front side, and make sure that you are attaching the ends of your sleeves to those points to get the most even coverage of your sleeve. And then what I do is I take a long piece of yarn and a tapestry needle, and we're gonna thread that on. And then I start in this center stitch here and pull through. So I have about half my yarn on one side and half of it on the other. And then I start doing basically the mattress stitch again. So I'm gonna go weave back and forth between both sides. I can take the stitch marker out, and I'm gonna use one side of my yarn to seam one side of my sleeve, then pick up the other side of my yarn to seam the other side of the sleeve. This just helps, I feel, get the most accurate seaming so that you don't accidentally, seam one sleeve side on farther down or closer up than the other. But you can use whichever seaming method you prefer, whatever you're most comfortable with. And then once you get this fully seamed on one side, you'll pick up the other tail, seam down the other side, and then repeat the process with the second sleeve. And it helps just to continue to kind of keep it laying flat. Make sure that you are keeping your sleeve lined up with the edge of your cardigan and making sure that you're not getting it pulled too tight this way or stretched too far the other way. So just continue to seam your sleeves on, and then I'll meet you back here and show you how to do the underarm and side seams. All right, so now that we have both sleeves seamed on, we've folded our cardigan in half so that our front panels are in the front and our sleeves are in half, and now we just need to seam our sides down through the end of the ribbing and our sleeves from the underarm down to the cuff. I always like to start in the underarm and work my way down both the arm and the side seam first, and then repeat that on the other side, again using your preferred seaming method. Now that we have our cardigan seamed all together, I went ahead and woven any ends, so all my little ends from my hearts are all woven in. And we're going to be starting to work on our applied ribbing collar all the way around the front. So starting on the front right side with the right side facing you, you'll want to take your crochet hook and your color A yarn, and into that first stitch here, we're going to attach our yarn, chain 1, and then we want to single crochet into each one of these stitches of the ribbing. And then we'll also be single crocheting into the row ends all the way up the right side of our cardigan, single crochet into each stitch along the neckline of our cardigan, and then down the other side, the left-hand side. It's a little hard to get into this very last stitch of our ribbing. There we go. So again, we're just going to be working one single crochet into the edge of each row. So just continue single crochet all the way around your cardigan. Okay, so I've made it all the way back around to the other side of our cardigan. So we've single crocheted all the way around the whole front edge. And now it's time to do our applied ribbing. So in order to match our bottom ribbing and our cuff ribbing, we're going to chain 8. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now we're going to be working back and forth in rows, slip stitching into those single crochets we just made as we go. So into the second chain from the hook, we're going to single crochet and then single crochet into each chain across. And then once we get to our edge here, we'll kind of turn a little bit here, and we're going to slip stitch into the first 2 single crochets on our edge. Then we want to turn, and we're going to skip over those slip stitches. Okay. And now we are going to single crochet back loop only in each one of those stitches on our ribbing. So we should have 7 single crochet back loop only stitches. Okay, and then we chain 1 and turn. And then we're going to single crochet back loop only in each stitch until we hit the edge of our cardigan. and then again slip stitch into the next 2 single crochets along our collar edge. There's 1 slip stitch, 2 slip stitches, turn, skip over those slip stitches again, and work our single crochet back loop only. And we'll just repeat those 2 rows back and forth all the way around our entire cardigan edge. Then you can simply fasten off, weave in any remaining ends, and block if needed, and you'll be done with your Esme cardigan. Thank you so much for following along with this tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed it. Again, you can find all the written instructions in the description below through those links, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.